It's great to be on not the Andy Marr show to see Dr. Bob Gill again, and he was obviously at the 40th anniversary celebration of Jeremy Corbyn. It's good to see you there, Bob.
Hi, Crispin.
And I've seen you on Russell Brand as well. You're getting around. So I just thought there's a story that's come up this week, which is something that you've seen many times. You've already seen this, but you're blocked. Wes Streeting has blocked me. Well, not the Andrew Marr show on Twitter, so I can't read his tweets. That's something that you've already had. You weren't abusive to him. I wasn't particularly abusive to him. I didn't troll him. Someone may have tagged him in a post where I may have had an interview of you and you said something about him, but I wasn't trolling him. So that certainly wasn't. Is that the case with you? You weren't trolling him, were you?
No, he would put out a tweet and I would respond to it or do a quote tweet deconstructing his lies and his pro-privatization positions, decoding it for people. Because what he said quite a lot. There's a lot to respond to, but painting the private sector as some sort of solution for NHS waiting lists, I think I got blocked after I posted something about that.
Right. So he could have just replied and said, "Oh, actually, this is what's going on, and don't worry about it, Bob. It's all fine." But instead, he just blocks you. So he's obviously got something that he's not confident about, I suppose. But he is confident sometimes. He goes on the media a lot. He's quite a good performer in some ways at the media. He's obviously been trained in it. He was on the media this week on a morning breakfast show on the BBC, and this is what he said on the show.
People will hear that and say, we can't even sort out a computerized patient record system. How the heck are we going to be able to sort out AI in the NHS?
Well, I mean, I was spent yesterday morning with the shadow cabinet at Google's headquarters, talking to them about a range of possibilities right across the economy and in our public services.
Well, he wasn't particularly discreet about that. He's just said out and out, I've been spending time with Google, and they're discussing, obviously, if they get into power, this is the point, if they get into power, Google could have a look at public services and the economy somehow. What danger is there in that? Do you want to spell it out to us?
Yeah, well, I think that the first thing they're relying on is reinforcing a public perception that maybe tech is the solution to everything. Recently, I believe one of the senior developers of AI issued a very big warning that this is a technology we don't quite understand. Developments are progressing very rapidly, and we do not contemplate or can get our head around the implications of humanity, let alone on the NHS. But governments and of both parties have a very bad track record in terms of dealing with the private sector, getting a good deal for the public, and particularly in IT. I could give you a couple of examples, but just promising technological fixes is part of the current zeitgeist, because public aren't really well informed about IT. They accept it at face value, but he's pretty clear. He wants to divert more public funding into multinational tech corporations. And, we don't know what they're going to do with that money and what are the long-term implications of what they're intending to do in terms of developing AI. What does that mean for the NHS workforce, for example? What does that mean when it comes to decision-making about treatment? AI is not equipped with a moral compass or an ethical compass. So will they be deciding who gets treatment? Will they be deciding on what criteria? And how will the public be able to challenge it? Or will they just quietly accept that, this is how things are done now and I'm not eligible for treatment? So there is a huge amount of risk and jeopardy involved in blindly jumping to very expensive, very profitable potential tech solutions to problems that there are much simpler solutions for.
And you know, you pointed out to me that there's actually been a precedent with Google obtaining data. This is a story from 2021. DeepMind faces legal action over NHS data use. Legal case has been launched on behalf of more than 1 million people whose confidential medical records were obtained by Google. In 2015, Google's AI firm DeepMind was given the personal records of 1.6 million patients at the Royal Free London NHS Foundation Trust. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so this was a scandal that was revealed a few years ago. Royal Free Hospital handed over personal confidential medical records to this company, DeepMind, without patient consent. Then it was discovered that they were using this supposedly to develop an algorithm to monitor people's kidney function, but we don't know what they were doing with this data. The crucial point is you need consent from the patient, and this was never given. So they were fined. I think it was a trust that was fined by the Information Commissioner, a pathetic fine. One of the chief executives from the Royal Free was then promoted to be head of NHS London. So it seems that people high up in the NHS and in government who make very bad decisions face no penalty, and very often they're rewarded for their incompetence and collusion with corporations.
So that, I mean, the outsourcing is not actually legal in some cases, and also it's very expensive. And I mean, this is another example that you've pointed out to, which is the £10 billion IT disaster at the NHS. National Programme for IT in the National Health Service was the largest public sector IT programme ever attempted in the UK, originally budgeted to cost approximately £6 billion over the lifetime of the major contracts. These contracts were awarded to some of the biggest players in the IT industry, including Accenture, CSC, Atos, Origin, Fujitsu, and BT. This is, I mean, that's an incredible amount of money. I mean, the government couldn't deliver this service, and none of those companies could. So is this possibly why Wes Streeting is blocking us, because there's so much evidence of bad malpractice, I mean, going on with these outsourcing contracts that you know, he's got no leg to stand on when he supports them.
Yeah, well, you know, these corporations, as soon as government starts getting interested in buying their products or procuring their services, they rub their hands with glee, because they know they can rip off the public purse without any significant comeback. The example of Connecting for Health in the early 2000s was led by a Mr. Simon Stevens. I've mentioned his name a few times. What happened to Simon Stevens? He went off to work for a private insurance company, United Health, and then he was hired back again by the NHS and was chief executive of NHS England for 7 years, 2014 to 21. So being head of a IT contracting disaster was no bar for him being employed for the highest post in the NHS. What happened to these private companies? Well, they pocketed the cash. There was no penalty for them to pay. The public is left bearing all the risk. So whenever they engage with these private sector companies, the contracts are written in such a way that the taxpayer underwrites the liability, we pay through the nose, and we end up with a product that either doesn't work, or it's a very expensive development, or we have to buy the services of the company providing it indefinitely. So we end up paying rents for products and innovations that we have helped create through the use of patient records. And let's not forget, the NHS has the best patient record data set on earth. Now, this is a gold mine that our governments are quite happy to gift to the private sector so they can develop products to sell back to the NHS at huge profit. You couldn't make it up.
I just have to ask you this as well, actually. Do you think a Labour government with Wes Streeting as as Health Secretary would be more dangerous than a Conservative government under Rishi Sunak?
Absolutely, just as dangerous, or more likely more dangerous, because the public will be lulled into a false sense of security that this lot will be better than the last lot. So they will get away with probably more than a Tory government that everybody is sick to death of and is blatantly corrupt and dysfunctional. So they will use a honeymoon period to line the pockets of these big corporations and make hay while the sun shines. But let's not forget, a lot of the politicians we have seeking power now do not come into public office to serve the public or on some point of political principle. They are making connections with the private sector. So when their time in Parliament is up, they'll go on and line their own pockets with directorships or advisory roles. And, that's what it's all about. That is the game that's being played. We have temporary politicians who may perform well on TV, who are not serving the public interest, but serving their own careers.